huge for women to have our rights, and we're losing our rights by allowing transgenders to compete in women's sports, especially even young women.
I remember as a kindergarten teacher got into trouble because I tacked up drawings of genitals. I thought, yes, that was in the 70s, and people were shocked.
Hey everyone, it's Rachel Emmanuel with True North. I'm here at a mall in Calgary, and I'm going to gather some people's thoughts on what they think about the new transgender policies that Danielle Smith announced last week. Let's go. So did you hear about Danielle Smith's new transgender policies?
I did.
And what did you think of them?
I think it's a good idea. I think parents need to have responsibility for their children and their children's decisions. I don't think children that are that young don't have the life experience to make those kind of decisions that are going to affect their future lives. It's certainly a fine line to walk. It's going to disappoint a lot of people, but I think there's too much power been given to people other than parents in the raising their children.
I think we do need to protect our children. It's very important. I don't think these decisions are meant for children, and that we are here to protect them until they're at the right age to make those decisions.
I'm a little torn about that, but in general, it's not up to the government to decide.
So do you think parents should be allowed to give their kids sex reassignment surgeries if the parents and the children agree?
Yeah, I think so. It depends. There's lots to going into it, but if there's enough people involved and it's understood, it's kind of hard to say.
They know what they're talking about and what's appropriate. I've taught kindergarten to grade 12 and post-secondary. And, in kindergarten, I remember as a kindergarten teacher got into trouble because I tacked up drawings of genitals. I thought, yes, that was in the 70s, and people were shocked.
I work in healthcare, and so I, first of all, don't think it's right that politicians are trying to step their toes on anything to do with health and the rights of people, especially minors. I wholeheartedly believe that people's, healthcare teams, and maybe not necessarily their parents, but these kids that trust their healthcare team are in the proper hands. And so I really feel disgustingly upset about the fact that Danielle Smith feels that she can meddle in kids' lives.
When it comes to issues of healthcare, you said leaving these decisions up to the experts. Ultimately, healthcare is funded by the taxpayer, so our government is going to have a certain amount of oversight on what is spent on. For example, if you want to go see the chiropractor, you're going to pay for that out of pocket. If you go see your family doctor, that's covered by the province. So the government is going to have some oversight. So why do you think it's inappropriate that she would be saying, I'm the leader of this province and we're going to have oversight. Healthcare is a responsibility to be administered by the province, and this is a law that we're making because we're not comfortable with minors having sex reassignment surgeries.
I think this is a very fair question to be asking, but I would then pose the same question about abortion for mature minors, is that, already in the province of Alberta and in Canada, sex reassignment surgery is very few and far between. I do know that people go out of country for that quite often. And so I think it would be very harming to say that we're going to make this decision for you because we are in charge of healthcare decisions. I feel that very strongly that the more appropriate response would be to say, this is our understanding of it holistically, whereas I just feel like this has been a shotgun decision made because of opinion. And this is how we're willing to support you. I don't think it's appropriate for a group of politicians to be saying we're making this decision for you because we don't feel like it's right and that you're able to make this decision.
One of the other thing that was announced is that the Premier is going to be giving taxpayer money to fund sex reassignment surgeries for adults and actually bring some doctors in that could perform those surgeries for adults. Do you agree with that decision?
I haven't thought much on that. Totally different story when we're talking about adults, for sure.
Do you think taxpayers should pay for these surgeries?
Yes. Yeah, it's part of healthcare, in my opinion.
So why shouldn't the government have a say in it if the government is deciding whether or not they're going to pay for it?
Because it's not, healthcare is healthcare. It's not got anything to do with the government.
One other thing that she announced was that they're going to be working with sports organizations to make sure that there's spaces for women's only sporting, so biological men or transgender women won't be able to perform in sports with women, and then they're going to try to increase co-ed options as well. Do you think that this is a right move to protect, female only sporting, or do you think that this goes too far?
I think it's important. It's huge for women to have our rights, and we're losing our rights by allowing transgenders to compete in women's sports, especially even young women. So I think it's important that we have just a league of their own. They can still perform, but just give the opportunity for biological women. Yeah.
I'm not saying women are weak or something, but they should have the leverage of competing with other women. When it comes to sports and things that really define the character of a person, I think that should be limited to whatever the perimeter that belongs to.
She's taken on the role of a sports expert now. Again, those decisions are being made by people in the sports community, and they haven't sensed a need to do that, so why does she?
Well, what about some women athletes who have come forward and said, this is really unfair that I'm being forced to compete against biological men who have an advantage against me?
Well, I believe that a trans woman has undergone a lot of different hormonal treatments, so they're not totally a man anymore. That's the whole point. They still may have a little more muscle mass or whatever, but I think that it seems okay to me. But again, I bow to the people in the sports field who have worked with different medical staff to work out what's proper and who's allowed in.
Depends what kind of sport. With only swimming is fine, but with the game sport, football or game sport, I don't think it's right.
So biological men can compete against women in sports like swimming, but not in sports like football, where women might be physically harmed, is what you're saying?
It's difficult. If I punch you, or you punch me, the girl punch with less power. With the man punch, they may die. That's the main reason for protection.
Currently in Alberta, 4 out of 5 of women's weightlifting records and awards are held by biological men or transgender women. Do you think that's fair?
That's what I said. That demotivates the character and the perspective of a woman in general. So that's something that we should not know. That's where the fine line comes into play, and we should define the line between the character and the sport.
That's very interesting. That would be the muscle mass, I suppose. Maybe they should think about having another category. I don't know. It's something to think about there, I guess. There's some room to think about categories, but
yeah, that's basically what the Premier announced, that they were going to be looking at making more co-ed sporting events so that biological men or trans women could compete against other women that feel comfortable competing against them, but that there would also be some exclusively sports spaces and tournaments for biological women. And the Premier's going to be working with sporting organizations on this, so I think it's safe to say she has consulted with sporting experts on this matter.
Well, I'd be surprised. She didn't seem to have consulted with too many people, and that's not what I've heard. It's hard for me to have an opinion there.
All right, everyone, I hope that you enjoyed that. I think I asked about 100 people to stop, and as soon as they heard the word transgender, they really weren't interested in giving their opinions. It's obviously still such a controversial issue today, and I think we can all honestly give homage to the Premier for opening it up and diving into what is a really difficult subject matter to discuss and to create policy on. I had some really good interviews today. I know that you guys won't agree with everything everyone said, but I ask you to just be polite in your comments, because I appreciate that these people were willing to stop and engage, because so few people weren't. And I did continue to talk to some of the people afterwards, especially that lady in the green jacket, and I feel like there can be common ground that could be found if we were all a little more willing to have these difficult discussions. So thank you guys for tuning in. That's all I have time for today, and don't forget that our regular episode will be out on Saturday as always. Have a great week, and God bless.